Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Startups Unedited. Today, I am excited to be joined by Doug, the legend Landis, who has been, you are the godfather of go to market and sales productivity, sales enablement.
I
I
mean,
won't dive
fine.
too deep because I'm sure like 99.9% of our audience is already familiar with you. But there were a couple of things we were going to dive into today. And I wanted to start off with like fundraising right now. We were kind of in the green room talking about Hopin and how that was insane and some of these other experiences from the past. And maybe there should be a podcast about that. But let's talk about that. What's the fundraising environment right now? And for the folks out there, this is January 2026. We are about 3.5 years into the LLM generative AI revolution that has changed everything.
Mm-mm.
And it's not only changed the way that we operate as organizations, go to market, or even just ops in general, but fundraising, right?
Yeah. So by the way, we're like 20 years into the LLM world. So let's just be smart about this. The AI technology has been around for a really long time, right? It really has. Like it started with, I think it was like back when IBM had a supercomputer that played the chess match against the guy in like in the 90s. And then Google came out with their own kind of self-learning model, and then they play. Anyway, it's been around for a long time. We actually invested when I was at Emergence Capital. We invested in AI kind of first technology over a decade ago. It's been around. The reality is we actually now have the compute power to go leverage the capabilities of all the data and to be able to crunch all the data that we have been generating over the last 20 years because everything was so flush. But you're not wrong about the fact that like right now things are moving so fast and we have access to so much information, both, investors and founders, buyers, sellers, everybody has access to all this information. And so kind of back to your question. So I didn't mean to like kind of go on a little tangent there, a little history lesson, but back to your original question.
We need to give history to the audience. So to some folks,
it's just important. I mean, like this is not new. What we're experiencing is new, but it's similar to the way like SaaS blew up, in the early days. Like in the beginning, everyone was like, well, what is this? And like you could argue 3 years ago, everyone was like, this AI stuff, yeah, we don't know. And now everyone's like, oh shit. Here's a little side story. Sorry for cussing. Side story. So I was on a podcast like 2 months ago, and there's about 250 operators on the call. And I mean, we're talking like rev ops and VPs of sales and CROs. And I asked the simple question, I'm like, what percent of your entire tech stack is still SaaS? Do you know what the number was? On average, 250 operators.
I'm going to say half.
85%.
Wow.
So we think like AI is taking over the world, and it's not really, not yet. It will in the next, I'm going to call like next 2 to 4 years. It's definitely going to come down from 85% to 50%. But like anyway, we got to be careful about all this AI hype. This kind of leads to the investor conversation that you just asked, or the investor question that you just asked, because here's the problem. I was just actually hanging out with an investor last night, and we were talking about this specifically. There are some companies that are just murdering it right now. And there are some investors that are so happy that they made these crazy investments in Lovable or Supabase or Runway or like you name it. There's some really, really interesting
Gamma.
Gamma's actually a really cool story because they've kind of sneakily, generated turned this $100 million business into like a PowerPoint killer. Like it's kind of cool. It's this cool little niche business. And their investors will likely make a ton of money. But here's the reality. No investors are making any money right now. The only way they're making money is they're taking money from like when they go raise a big round, maybe they pull some money down or they sell some of their equity that they bought in the early stages, whether that was seed or Series A or maybe in Series B. But there haven't been any liquidity events. So just think about that. So as an investor, like we were literally used to liquidity events every year for your funds. Like you're just stoked, right? And there haven't been liquidity events for like 3 or 4 years for a lot of funds. So from a fundraising perspective, things are bonkers, totally bonkers. What used to be 2 years ago, You could do 600. You could be doing 600K in ARR and go raise a Series A of 20 to 30 million bucks, right? Now, to go raise a seed, you need to be somewhere in the 3 to 600K in ARR to go raise a seed. And that's a seed somewhere between, like, we'll call it 3 to 6 million, right? To get to Series A, you need to be 3 to 4 million in revenue, right? So think about that. Like, you've gone from having to be at 600K to $1 million in revenue. We've 4x'd it in terms of the expectation of revenue, right? So it needs to be proven now a lot faster. Now, the good news with AI technology is you can build a lot faster. You can keep your cost basis down. You can, test and iterate a lot faster. And so that's good news. Like, we've raised a bunch of angel money, and for us, it's like, geez, we got like a 5-month runway right now. Now, of course, we're not getting paid, but until we start closing more big customers, and when we'll start to draw down from that. But the reality is, it's like, if you think about the fundraising environment, you have got to be proven. So these companies that are, and by the way, just think of it this way too, in the world of SaaS and even in the world of AI, all the companies that have raised capital early on, they're all dev tools, right? It's because you're investing in this area to help develop and build the capabilities. And then it's all the architecture tools around it that are supporting it, right? Like, I can't remember what, is a company, Click something that Aaron Katz is the co-founder and CEO of, and they've raised bazillion dollars. They've raised like, I don't know, $300-400 million. It's because they are the database that's supporting, like, the unstructured database that supports all these AI models and companies, right? So it's like, you got these dev companies, you got these model companies, and kind of the infrastructure that's supporting all that. They're blowing up because everyone's trying to figure out what and how to build and how to leverage this technology. I think over the next 2 years, we're going to see a ton of investment in apps. Now, here's the difference though. These apps can't just be wrappers on top of an LLM. That's no good. I mean, look at Jasper.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Jasper was the first wrapper on an LLM, and they were worth, a couple bill, and then they, now they're kind of like, oh, who are we now?
Yeah.
And so but the app layer now is where what drives more interaction and workflow and more kind of data movement, like this merging of your SaaS applications, your AI applications. I think over the next 2 years, it's really gonna blow up. So there's gonna be some opportunity there, but again, you got to show like crazy growth and insane cost basis, right? So I don't know, it's interesting.
This reminds me, Doug, of a conversation I've had this week with a friend of mine, Ravi Belani, who is the CEO over at Alchemist Accelerator. So he's, founder of, is a early stage B2B enterprise focused accelerator. And the way that the way you just spoke to the space was very similar to the way that he's kind of sort of perceiving it, which is you have all these AI infrastructure, dev tool investments where he's saying they're getting crazy valuations, and they're crazy, and they're not even necessarily having to have that much revenue traction, because a couple things. One of the things that he talked about was, like, in that space, you can still have competitive moats around human resources and talent, because you can't vibe code a infrastructure, right? What he was saying was that the application layer is the one that's just like really, really wild and crazy, because you're seeing organizations like Gamma. We talked about, if you look at Gamma's background, and I'm very curious in their story, so I kind of look back, they were chugging along, barely getting by for a bit until I forgot what version of ChatGPT or OpenAI came out, and then they were able to kind of bring that vision to life. And so they're a wrapper. They were able to get to, as you sort of described it, as a niche business, 100 million, how big does it actually get, long term when you think about it from a venture perspective? But, Ravi was talking about that application layer now, because it's largely democratized. You can do insane things, with these LLMs to build product. How do you find competitive moats when engineering talent used to be, and being able to build software was, with great talent, was a moat in the past, no longer. So this is actually a good segue into your expertise or what you've become a legend in is like go to market. And he was saying go to market today, brand, community, these sort of things are bigger moats than ever before.
I totally agree. You're not wrong. And to kind of build on that, if you think about that, like, so here's the question: where are these companies going? Right. So even the dev tools, and I was having this conversation last night. I'm like, all right, let's look at Runway. Runway's killing it. Where are they going? Are they going to be a big standalone iconic software company that can withstand going public and withstand the public markets with all this new competition that's coming out? Because, you're talking like, AI and video. It's like, all right, is there a there? I look at Gamma, and the problem is when we're all of our app companies, because we are one, you've got to be really careful how invested you are into one model, because that actually becomes a detractor from an investor standpoint. It's like, oof, well, what happens? I mean, look, OpenAI is losing money, a lot of money, right? So what happens if they go away? Right. Okay. You got Gemini, you got others. There's other models that are going to continue to are going to continue to develop and evolve. But it's such a crazy space and time right now. It's also so fun. But to your point, so all right, there's a lot of noise. And I think one of the biggest things that most companies face right now, so if you're building a startup, you're in the midst of this right now, there's so much noise. The number one thing that we hear from our target customers that we're talking to, and we're talking to a lot of really big companies, are like, oh, we're going to build this ourselves. And then they try, and then we literally had a company yesterday tell us, he's like, look, this is a very, very technical company, and they could probably architect what we've built. It'll take them some time, but they got a lot of people, a lot of money, a lot of resources. And he was like, look, here's the deal. I don't want to build it. I don't want to support it. I don't want to maintain it. It's not our expertise. It's not what we do. We're not in the business of doing this. You guys are like purpose built for this. And so we're just going to suck in all of your data. Can we do that? We're like, yep, no problem. Right. So it's like, we're going to find new use cases that I think we hadn't even thought of as kind of startup organizations. But what's really, you said it, I think what's really going to start to stand out is brand. I mean, look, Gamma is not the only company that does really sexy, slides, but guess what? That's the name we all know.
Yeah.
Right. We all know ChatGPT because OpenAI was first, even though some people would argue Gemini is better. Right. And then there's Perplexity and there's Grok and there's all these other, but we all know we all go to ChatGPT first. It's what we all have on our phones. And it's because they got out there first, and they have a brand, and they have leadership, and they understand. And I'd say the other thing is too, all these companies have expertise, right? And that expertise helps to back up the brand. And the other thing is too, the brands have come out and said something very unique and provocative, and something that they can own, that people are like, oh, that's cool. That feels like something I can trust. Like, I think the whole conversation now between brands and prospects and sellers and buyers is completely 100% anchored on trust. Like that's how we have to operate if we're going to win.
What do you think about like building community? And that's very sort of related to brand, right? It's a major play, I think, in many cases. Like, how do you build that community in a way that is like effective, but also parlays into pipeline, right? Because like I think that's one of the big issues that people are constantly doing. They're doing podcasts like this and events and all this stuff, but like it's got to ultimately, I think I have found that leadership, the board, et cetera, is going to kill it if it's not ultimately, being able to be attributed to pipeline or revenue.
Well, let me ask you a question in return. How many people out there right now today are talking about how much pipeline they're generating from community-led growth? I haven't seen a whole lot of posts saying like, from community-led growth is generally like, I'm crushing pipeline, because all everyone right now is talking about is how difficult Outbound is. And so everyone's like, great brand, events, people want to get back to face-to-face. So to me, community is about like doing dinners. I think it's about leveraging the communities that exist out there Like, so for us, because we're in the world of go-to-market technology, so it's leveraging the pavilions, it's leveraging all the communities that already exist that we can tap into, and then sponsoring, co-hosting, doing our own dinners, peeling off. It's kind of like the old Dreamforce model. You don't go to Dreamforce to go to Dreamforce. You go to Dreamforce to create your own mini Dreamforce, right? With your peers and your partners, and like you create your own little community there. I think that has staying power, but I think we anchored on, I think far too many companies anchored on kind of building their own community, right? And like, oh, we're going to build our own community and they're going to generate all this, awareness and interest for us. And I haven't really specifically seen a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
I do think though, kind of an offshoot of that though, partnerships are really, really valuable. Yeah. I think, like, to me, I think of community in much more of a smaller scale. Like, again, like I said before, events, et cetera, things that feel more bespoke and personal, right? This stuff matters. In-person matters, but I also think partnerships matter. Partnerships who can be an extension of who you are. They can talk about you on your behalf because they've got the clout and the credibility, and they have reach into different pools of audiences that maybe you do. So, like, I think right now it's smarter to double down on partnerships, key partnerships, versus this whole, like, let's build community for the sake of community.
Yeah. The Slack community.
It also depends on like how big, Slack communities, how many more can I be a part of?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you kidding me?
I mean, look, I've been tasked with trying to build them multiple times, and it's like the only time I've actually ever seen traction is when I was able to leverage other channels, build community on social and through the through the field marketing events and that sort of stuff, and then start to like have a real incentive to like, hey, let's have these conversations in digital spaces. Otherwise it's like they're just crickets, nobody signs up, etc.
Totally. So know where your communities are in your in your crew, in your space. We got Pavilion, I got Sales Assembly, I got so many that I can tap into in the world of go-to-market, which is great. And that's what we're going to do.
And Doug, we've been talking for at least, I think the first time I remember myself saying or kind of articulating what I thought was going to happen as the consumerization of B2B/enterprise purchasing, probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago or whatnot. I remember talking to someone about that. And it feels like there were a lot of these variables that have finally come into play these days that maybe I didn't see, like the AI stuff, and the impact that it's having on, being able to have a product technical differentiation or moat. And one of the ways that I think made a lot of sense when I was having a conversation, actually I had it today and same conversation yesterday, which was, this partnership angle, which was if we agree that B2B is moving and continuing to move towards the sort of consumerization or B2C-ish type buying, and we look at consumer brands, let's just talk about Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola, my wife loves Coca-Cola, right? Now, what's Coca-Cola? Water,
sugar,
sugar, and that's it, right? Like, we, at this point, we can all make that in our kitchen, which is shout out to you for your awesome kitchen content and cooking content. Anyways, I follow you on Instagram now.
Just so everybody knows, I have a separate Instagram channel for my cooking because I'm having so much fun doing it because it's fun.
It's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. We all love to eat.
So fun.
And, so we can all put this together, but what makes Coca-Cola special, obviously, is the brand and the development, but the distribution, right? They have channels everywhere, partnerships everywhere. It's in every. So if we agree that it's going to be, again, consumerized, then I think it's naturally going to move into the direction where we're going to need better distribution channels and / partnerships in the same way that consumer brands have leveraged these things for eons.
100%. You're not wrong. I mean, like, the extension of your brand through your partnerships. And by the way, partnerships don't just have to be companies you're partnering with. Like, the way we're thinking of partnerships right now are individuals, people that have clout, that have expertise in particular areas. Like Ann Powell, she's both an advisor and, kind of an expert for us We were adding a few more people, which I can't really tell you just yet, but like that same level because, and by the way, and they're coming to us. They're like, hey, what you guys have built is amazing. How can I help? How can I get involved? And we're like, okay, cool. Let's do this. And by the way, we're also, at this stage, we're talking about building startups. We're paying them if they help us to identify deals that close, right? Because guess what? It's way better paying somebody who's got leverage and clout and relationships at the C level, in an organization. They can walk us into a customer and we can, launch right into a demo or POC. By the way, that cost of that sale is way less than like, let's go hire a whole bunch of, kind of BDRs, SDRs, AEs that are out kind of cranking that don't have the brand cachet or the reach. Every early startup that I've talked to that's kind of at our stage, and just so everybody knows, we're like pre-seed stage right now. I'm like, dude, go get a bunch of partners, people that have reach and have leverage, and pay them a lot, like 30% on any deal that gets closed. Like, who cares? Like, because our cost basis is so low that it's still, we're still making a ton of money. And at the end of the day, we want the brands, we want the relationships, we want, the long-term, we want the logos so that we can show investors, like, look at the progression, but we're also going to learn a ton from them, right? Because in the early days, it's all about partnership. And because we're partnering through, we're landing these customers through our partners or the people that are kind of referring on our behalf. Guess what? Like, they're willing to give when, the product is like 90% there and they've got this long list of things they would love the product to do. It's like, cool, we'll do that in time, but they're willing to make that investment, right?
Yeah.
It happens.
Well, Doug, I know you were an investor in SalesLoft, and that era of tools was really, really exciting. I mean, I guess we're still what SalesLoft did do the PE deal and outreach. Not sure what their strategy is, but
by the way, that is still the greatest. That is the greatest outcome. SalesLoft is the greatest outcome in the world of go-to-market tech today.
Isn't it? I mean,
kudos to you, Kyle, my brother. Yeah. Like,
love you, Kyle.
Damn, dude.
And Kyle was such a hustler. Oh boy. I remember meeting Kyle. Well, I first met him online because obviously I was in the Bay Area and he was in Atlanta, and it was like super early days, and I was trying to do something. You remember his first prospector tool? Yeah. So I was doing something that was
that tool got to 10 mil. They got to 10 mil in revenue with that tool. And then they had to kill it because LinkedIn was like
LinkedIn. Yeah. Oh, that's another topic too. LinkedIn seems to be back in that, behaving that way now with a lot of folks. But I remember meeting Kyle back then, and we did a podcast session. This is probably 2011, 2012.
Nice.
And he was just like hustling, and so I'm just so happy because like, well, Kyle well, and there's just some folks who you're like, they're good folks and they deserve it, and they worked hard, and they pounded the pavement,
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, yeah, they definitely had some offers on the table, like early days, to get acquired, and they're like, nope, we're not going to do it. Now, of course, Emergence Capital was investors in the company early on. It's funny. I knew about Kyle before I even got to Emergence, and I had a relationship with him. And then when I got to Emergence, he's like, dude, you guys are investors. That means we get to work together. And I was like, oh, how great is this? That was great.
Well, one of the reasons why I was bringing up the topic was like, my understanding is that a lot of those folks, and I don't know necessarily about SalesLoft, in as much as I know about what Outreach was doing with partners and channels and these implementation partners. If you look at like what Jake Dunlap and a lot of those guys were doing with implementation, right? That was a huge channel, because I think, at least my understanding, not only did they acquire, so they had those consultants go in there, try to fix or set up these stacks, but then they were also doing all the enablement and onboarding and stuff, right? And that seemed, just since we're talking about channels and partnership, that was another kind of angle on the whole sort of partnership led growth stuff that seemed to really move the needle. One last thing I want to say is, like, one of my consulting clients now we just bought Outreach for them. And same thing, like we went through a third-party consulting company that did all the implementation, setup, enablement, training, etc. And I never talked to an Outreach person, right? So it's really interesting for the folks out there. Again, like, what is your version of that?
Totally. And by the way, and just so you know, that's still super important today, because look, most AI tooling and technology, everyone says it's so easy. Bullshit. It's not. I've tried every AI SDR tool on the market outside of just going with Unify and saying like, here, you guys go do it. But like all these products, there's a serious learning curve. They're incredibly powerful, 10x more powerful than what you would have gotten before. But the reality is like, there is still a learning curve. This is why this like go-to-market engineer role, I think, is going to be like, there's a huge future in the go-to-market engineer. So, all of you folks in go-to-market that are listening to this, like, get your AI engineering chops. Learn how to, use N8N and Lovable and go build an app.
Play,
yeah, go play, because the reality is like, so, but here's the thing though, you can build a whole consultancy on like, hey, all these AI tools sound easy. Like, I've got the playbook to actually set up this stack or this stack or this stack for you, in no time. Right. By the way, look at Clay. You want to talk about companies that like took a while to take off. Clay took 7 years before it really took off.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that. Like, they were grinding it out, just like Gamma, just like chugging along. And then all of a sudden, whoop, they found their rocket fuel, escape velocity. And it was like, oh, it's because, Clay, they created a whole bunch of partnerships, these Clay agencies, and they empowered them, because Clay is really powerful, but it's also really complicated. Guess what? A lot of these tools are really powerful, but they're complicated. And so you have an opportunity to build partnerships on people who could either train, educate, enable, or implement your products. Really think about that. I think it's a great opportunity for everybody.
Awesome. Yeah. My buddies over at Meritech, actually one of my old roommates, he's at Meritech, he did the Clay deal, and those, I think they're happy. I know he's a very like thoughtful investor. And so the fact that they did that now, after all that time, and I had heard part of the story from that crew, my old roommates. So it's very inspiring. And yeah, I think they were New York based. I wanted to transition real quick for the folks out there who are watching at, everything that you do, and, all your storytelling expertise, and they're, they're trying to think about like, Doug, what do I do? What do I do? How do I go to market right now? What's the new marketing mix? Because I'm doing the LinkedIn content, I'm running the paid ads, I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm just not seeing the impact in a meaningful way. And, a lot of folks they tend to kind of default back to like, oh, people are just not buying SaaS or whatever. But to your point, 85% of the folks you talked to recently, they're still buying traditional SaaS, right? So what advice would you give these folks around kind of in 2026 implementing what you would consider the modern B2B marketing mix?
Whew, that's such a great question.
I know it's a big one.
It's like, whoa. I mean, there's so much.
Like, what's the meaning of life, Doug?
There's so much to unpack here, because like, look, here's the thing, I'd say the first thing that you need to think about is, what's your brand story? What is your brand telling about who you are and what you know about your customer base and what you're really trying to help your customers accomplish, right? So I think what a lot of people spend too much time focusing on is themselves in their brand narrative. And even if you're focusing on your customers and what you think you can help your customers accomplish, the reality is there's two things that really matter most. Number one, you sell outcomes. So what outcomes can your customers expect by leveraging technology, whether it's yours or somebody else's? And number two, what are they trying to accomplish with their customers? That's the language that you really need to start to understand and speak. And most people, by the way, they speak their own language, meaning like, I've got my own company and we speak our own speak based on like what we do and our models and our, architecture, et cetera. But what we say and do matters very little. What matters is the language of my buyers and the language of their customers. And so the first and foremost, you got to think about like, what is our brand? What do we represent? What language are we speaking? Are we speaking our buyer's language? And do we truly understand what they're trying to do with their customers? That's number one. And then I think number two, you also have to get you have to get out there and be provocative. Like, the brands that come out and actually like stand for something and they, put an anchor in the ground. Like, for example, we're StoryPath. We are going to become the story company. So if you think about StoryPath, it's like, oh, they're the story company. We do a whole lot of stuff in order to actually craft the stories and narratives for our customers. But like, I want us to be known as the story company. So all I'm doing is posting about storytelling because I've also been doing it for over a decade. And I kind of have a point of view about storytelling. And so it's like, so you got to find your anchors, right? My co-founder is all about AI and go-to-market because he's built our product, right? So he's using AI. He's already generated over 1 billion credits. He's used over 1 billion credits in Cursor. Like, it's crazy. Like, he's got a strong point of view about AI and go-to-market because he's been building it for, over a year. And he was also at Salesforce with me in the early days. And so like, we have decided what our anchors are and our points of view are. So now we're going to market with that. And then we're going to use that to engage with our constituents and our buyers and our ICP. I think the other thing is too, and I had a conversation this morning with some BDRs, and it was like, look, there's like, in the early days, especially at our stage, like I got to think about outbound as advertising. Right. So like, instead of thinking, if I want a meeting with somebody, I'm going to send them a very specific email and then I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call them. Right. But for everybody else, if I need to get like, if I need to expand, like throw out a wide net, I need to think about like doing all my outbound as advertising. And so it's less about getting a meeting. It's more about what little nuggets can I share that could be really impactful to my buyer personas that I'm reaching out to, that would at least get them to go, huh, that's interesting. Cool. StoryPath. All right, great. Whatever. Delete. Cool. Move on. But the more I do that, the more, and then they see this podcast and they're like, oh, what is this StoryPath company? And then they go to StoryPath, they start to read about it and they're like, all right, I want to learn more. Right. So it's this like, we've shifted to a kind of a new domain of nurture campaigns. Here's the other thing you have to understand. And I think what we should end with this because I'm late to another call. But the thing you have to understand, there's 2 things that work right now. Your buyers, guess what, have access to the same information that you do, right? They do. And so they expect you to show up way different than ever before. And most sellers don't put in the work to show up different. They don't know what that actually means. So I'm going to challenge you all of you, founders, sellers, whatever role you're in, like, what do your buyers now expect you to show up understanding that's different than before? That's the first question you need to answer. The second thing you have to answer and understand is like, they're doing way more research about you than you ever thought possible. So if they take a meeting, know that they are way more prepared than you ever thought. They used to show up 5 years ago and be like, cool, tell me about StoryPath. And you're like, okay, here you go. Let me ask them discovery questions and do it. No, by the time I get somebody on the phone, they're like, I get it. Here are my 3 questions. And now show me the product. You know what I mean? It's like, it's such a different experience now because everyone has access to the same information.
Awesome. Doug, have a great day. Everyone follow Doug, check out storypath.ai and talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy. It was awesome.